The Prime Minister will be headed to Bhutan soon, a trip which has been delayed because of poor weather conditions over Paro. He needs to fly to Paro first before getting to Thimphu. But the visit was planned to be just less than a week after the Bhutanese Prime Minister was here in India. The visit is crucial, an attempt to further strengthen an already excellent relationship with Thimphu at a time when there has been a systemic slicing of Bhutanese territory by China. Bhutan and China are in the middle of boundary talks. India will be looking very closely at the outcome. India is also looking to step up economic cooperation with Bhutan. It's these images of Chinese townships being carved into the north of Bhutan which are the latest examples of how Beijing has been illegally occupying the territory of an essentially defenseless nation. The images, first showcased by NDTV, show how China has not even spared ancestral areas of the royal family. But it is further to the southwest that India has real concerns. In 2017, India and China had a standoff in the high-altitude Doklam Plateau. While Chinese soldiers did retreat, they went on to occupy Doklam from another axis, a reality now reflected even on Google Earth Pro, which identifies all of Doklam as being disputed. India believes that Doklam is indisputably Bhutanese territory and that any Chinese push here will mean a realignment of the tri-junction from a spot called Batangna, which you can see on your map over here, to the Gipmochi mountain over here. That's what China wants. And if that happens, Chinese soldiers may end up occupying this ridge line. It's called Jamperi. And if that does indeed happen, they'd have direct line of sight to the Siliguri corridor, the narrow sliver of land which connects the northeast with India's remaining states. While Chinese soldiers aren't atop Jamperi yet, an area India is watching very closely, they are constructing in a river valley adjacent to Doklam, details of which were first reported by NDTV. This is the Amuchu River Valley. These are Chinese villages constructed in the last few years. Any construction here is a matter of enormous concern for India. India's response to all of this is economic, cultural and through infrastructure support. India's merchandise trade with Bhutan tripled since 2014. India's bilateral trade with Bhutan in 2022 was worth 11,178 crores. There is deep hydropower cooperation with Bhutan, extremely strong educational, cultural cooperation and people-to-people exchanges as well. My colleague Saurabh Gupta sent us this report from Bhutan's capital Thimphu. Remember, the Prime Minister visits Bhutan tomorrow. Listen in to this report.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's state visit to Bhutan has been postponed due to inclement weather over and around the Paro airport. Now, this is of course important given the fact that this was a very important state visit and diplomatic channels on both sides are working out new dates, is what the Ministry of External Affairs has said in a statement. Now, obviously, Paro and Thimphu have seen very challenging weather all through the day today, and the forecast for Wednesday and Thursday are equally challenging, and therefore it is going to be perhaps prudent to postpone the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Bhutan. Although it's a very important visit, both sides are working out new dates, is what the MEA has said. Now, even today, inclement weather over the Paro airport was witnessed. In fact, when we were coming in, also it was very, very challenging weather. And Paro is an extremely challenging airport. The approach to the runways is also very challenging, and therefore obviously it is always best to fly in good weather. And therefore what we know is that there are several challenges because of the weather, and Prime Minister Modi's trip remains postponed at this point as both sides work out new dates. Now, let me give you a little bit of the importance that is accorded to this visit. Prime Minister Modi was to receive a huge welcome, and he will do so when he arrives on the new dates that are being worked out by diplomatic channels on both sides. But at this point, the latest that we have is that Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bhutan, the state visit, has been postponed due to inclement weather over the Paro International Airport, and that is something that is the latest as far as this visit of the Prime Minister to Bhutan is concerned.
Joining us now to look at the significance, the importance of the visit of the Prime Minister, we're joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri, also Lieutenant General Rameshwar Yadav, the former Director General of Infantry of the Indian Army. Ambassador Sikri, the Prime Minister going to Bhutan just days after the Bhutanese Prime Minister was over here. What is the message that New Delhi is trying to send?
Well, I think there are many messages in this visit because it's the visit that is taking place even after the election code of conduct has been declared. So obviously you will not see any substantive outcomes in terms of declarations or new projects and so on because of the electoral code of conduct. But the significance of the visit is that it highlights, number one, Prime Minister Modi's continuing commitment to the neighborhood first policy, and it highlights the significant role that Bhutan plays in this policy and the strategic significance of Bhutan. Now, I think definitely all the details you have given about the border dispute between Bhutan and China is a very important factor here, because we do know that with the former Prime Minister of Bhutan under Lote Tshering, the Chinese government was pushing very, very hard. They had several rounds of talks and they were wanting to, that three-step approach, the delimitation on paper, then the joint survey, and then the demarcation, and they were pushing that this process should be completed, thinking that this is what they would get with Prime Minister Lote Tshering. But that did not happen. At least the final stage has not been reached. And I think the vote, February 24 last month, there was a vote election for the new Prime Minister of Bhutan, and the vote shows that Lote Tshering's quite strong push and many, many meetings with the Bhutanese on the border dispute for his foreign minister and other people in his administration has not gone down too well with the people of Bhutan. And Tshering Tobge's election, Prime Minister Tshering Tobge coming, and then his first visit to India, shows his commitment. He's an old friend of India, his commitment to the friendship. And Prime Minister going just few days after his visit shows a reciprocal commitment. And I think Prime Minister's meeting with the King of Bhutan and the former king, the fourth king of Bhutan, and the present king of Bhutan would be very significant. We do know that last year the king of Bhutan did come to India. There were very significant talks. But now Prime Minister Modi going and continuing these talks with the king of Bhutan would be very significant. I think China's approach, the five-finger approach that they have to this entire region, for them, Tibet, Mao Zedong said that Tibet is the palm and the five fingers are Arunachal Pradesh, Bhutan, Sikkim, Nepal, and Ladakh. So they want control of the five fingers, and they are putting pressure. Now they have claimed a wildlife sanctuary in Bhutan, the Sakteng sanctuary, and they did it just out of the blue at an environmental meeting when Bhutan is trying to get the sanctuary included in the UNESCO list. And suddenly they say, sorry, you can't because this is a disputed area. So this is, of course, put off the people of Bhutan a lot, that, the China's aggressive campaigning, the aggressive declaration of so-called ownership of territories and so
Ambassador,
on.
just half a second. Let me go across to General Yadav as well. General, the Jhamperi Ridge, which I identified in that report, why is it significant to India?
You see, Jhamperi is located around 60 odd miles from Chicken Neck, that is around 14 miles corridor, that links our entire northeast. So hypothetically, in case Chinese troops, they come up to this Chicken Neck, they can cut off our entire northeastern sector, which is going to be a very big blow. That is number one. Second thing, another point which people are not talking about is the Sikkim. By coming to Chicken Neck, China would turn the defenses in Sikkim, wherein they will neutralize threat to the Chumbi Valley, which is a very viable threat that we can pose to China. So by coming there, they are carrying out, firstly, they're cornering India at all, politically and militarily altogether. And at the same time, they're turning our own defenses. In any case, while sitting on Jhamperi Ridge, you can have a line of sight to look into this complete valley that we have in front. That is first thing. Second thing, I want to link it up with what Ambassador has said. There is a wildlife sanctuary sector. Now, this is on the eastern part of Bhutan. And if you look at the location of this area, This area is precisely west of Tawang Valley, the Tawang sector. And from there, this can be converted into a farm base to approach Sela, where our Prime Minister has inaugurated that tunnel. And with the inauguration of the tunnel, the threat perception of China has increased manifold. And if you look at the timing of declaring this wildlife sanctuary as a disputed area, it was 2020. That's the time this tunnel, the work on this tunnel had started. So therefore, China is linking up. China does everything wherever they can get tactical advantage militarily, they go in for this. And this, to my mind, appears to be that kind of a issue. And in case they reach the Sela, they will cut off all the defenses in Tawang, which they have been looking for. Because Tawang, all said and done, is the political center of gravity as China is concerned. The dispute on the McMahon line, that watershed, as far as we are concerned, we call it on along the Thagla Ridge, whereas in China is talking on the straight Sela Ridge.
Right.
And
So essentially the point, General, that you're mentioning is that the threat of China extends both eastwards to us and west. On the one hand, Sikkim is an area of strategic concern, and Arunachal Pradesh, and this is all because China is putting pressure on Bhutan. I take that point.
Absolutely. If you look at it, it is an overall very big game plan that is going on.
Sure. General, 1 second. I want to go back to Ambassador Sikri, and let's talk a little bit again about Doklam, because what the Chinese quite clearly are trying to do are unilaterally changing the location of the tri-junction. It exists in a place called Batangla. They want to move it south to a mountain called Gipmochi. The moment they do that, then the entire area between Batangla in the north, which is where it exists, tri-junction between India, China, Bhutan, if they move that south, then the area in between essentially becomes theirs legally. I mean, that's what their claim would be. How important is it for India to resist any unilateral change of the location of the tri-junction over here?
It is absolutely vital to India's security. There is absolutely no doubt about this. That this is of primary significance. And I think it is to ensure that India and Bhutan are on the same wavelength on this strategic and very sensitive and crucially, critically important issue that Prime Minister Modi is going to Bhutan on this very short visit, but he wants to have his first-hand meeting with the King of Bhutan and with the senior king, the father of the present King of Bhutan. So I think that this is a very significant moment, and it is vital to counter China by having India and Bhutan on the same wavelength. We do know that when the Doklam crisis took place, India and Bhutan were very much on the same wavelength, and because of that we were able to ensure the status quo. But China has gone ahead, as you have quite rightly mentioned, building up these villages and resettling people there and putting tremendous pressure on Bhutan in all ways. And there's also the pressure they put through investments in Bhutan, telling them, let us restore diplomatic relations with Bhutan. Restore, they've never had. They want to have diplomatic relations with Bhutan. They want Bhutan to agree to that. And that has also been a very sensitive point for India. And they want, all kinds of openings between China and Bhutan, which India is very worried about. But I think that we have to work closely with the King of Bhutan. He's been a very sensible, very modern king. The kingship has been very forward-looking, looking at the interests of the people, and certainly not wanting to invite further pressure from China, because everybody knows about China's salami slicing tactics. They take a little and then they come again and take a little, and they want to continue that with Bhutan as well. So we have to sensitize that. So I think this visit is extremely significant, very short, but very, very significant, of critical existential importance to India.
Yeah. General Yadav, what the Chinese have also done is that we prevented them in the west of Doklam from continuing road construction towards that Jhamperi Ridge and Mount Gipmochi, which they were trying to in 2017. Not only have they physically occupied the rest of Doklam slightly away from our base at Dokala, they have also constructed east of Doklam, adjacent to it, in a river valley, the Amuchu River Valley, again pushing south. And in the process, even when border talks are taking place between Bhutan and China, they are just unilaterally constructing. So they come to the table and say, look, we have villages over here, and therefore it is ours. That's the way they seem to be operating, right?
China is always very ambiguous whenever they come to negotiating table, and they do it what they feel like. And like Ambassador has said, they believe in salami slices. And this is one of the modes of doing salami slices in this around the Doklam. You see, this river, if you take it further from Jampuri Ridge, it is providing a avenue to roll down. And if you look at in mountains, all the roads and tracks are all astride these rivers, because that is the only area where there is some kind of a passage. So this is what their plan looks like. It is only that Bhutan has been resisting, succumbing to their what they call it a swept offer. They are saying 465 kilometer in Jakarlung and Manchuma.
Yes.
You take that and give us around 269 square kilometer around Doklam. So this is what the tactics is, and our fear is under political pressure, Bhutan may not be now, at some point of time, in order to avoid their involvement in Sino-Indian rivalry that is going on, they may succumb to that, and if that happens, that is a matter of concern for India. And that's where this valley and the Jampuri Ridge, they come in. They are central to this entire strategic setup that we have. So it is a matter of concern to us.
Yeah. Ambassador Sikri, how important is it for India to up economic cooperation? The fact that, geographically we are very well connected with the Bhutanese. Rail links are now, are feasible. We've got existing economic bonds. Do you believe that that's how India can challenge the increasing physical presence of China in Bhutan?
Yes, absolutely. The people-to-people connect that is there between India and Bhutan, that is absolutely vital, because if the well-being of the people of Bhutan depends on India-Bhutan cooperation, then they will believe in that cooperation and support it. Now, the hydroelectric power cooperation is absolutely important and significant, and we've been working on it, and it's going well for both countries. Now, we are willing to bring in Nepal also, and Bangladesh also, in that the supply of power through India to Nepal and Bhutan. So this is building in the regional aspect. So the regional cooperation point of view is very important for India. Connectivity is very important. Two train links have been agreed to, one through West Bengal and the other with Assam, and these will be very important in people to people. Now, at one time, the people of Bhutan, the young people, younger generation, came to India in very large numbers to study, and almost all of them were graduates from Indian universities and then went abroad to other countries for their postgraduate. Now, a lot of them are going to Australia. Australia has emerged as a favorite destination for Bhutanese youth to go and study, but India is slowly also gaining ground as a second favorite destination after Australia. So we are continuing this dialogue with the people of Bhutan. The cultural aspect is very important. There is, work on the similarities between the problems of the women of Bhutan and the women of India. I work a lot of them with, my South Asia Women's Network. We have very close links with the women of Bhutan, and there's a lot of synergy and shared views on that. So we have to develop every possible linkage. Between the economic is very important, the social and cultural, the civilizational is important, the shared religious heritage of Buddhism is very important. And I think that it has been building up in recent years, and the people of Bhutan have appreciated this. The vote itself in last month's elections show this increasing appreciation of the connectivity with India. But there is not a moment to be where we can rest and say this is done. No, it's something on which you have to continue to work. And so I think this dialogue that Prime Minister Modi will have in Bhutan will throw up new ideas, new aspects that are important to Bhutan and to India, and will lay the base for strengthening and deepening this cooperation in the coming years, and not allowing China even a look-see, because we know it's not only with Bhutan, we've seen it in Bangladesh, we've seen it in Nepal, and we've seen it, of course, in other countries like Pakistan, where the pressure is relentless. Whether it was the BRI, and now there's a global development consensus that China wants agreement on, a global security consensus that China wants agreement upon, and global cultural consensus. It's forcing all these countries to accept their points of view on this. The BRI, fortunately, has fallen off the radar a lot, because many countries have landed up in debt, as we've seen in the case of Sri Lanka and ongoing in the case of Pakistan as well. But of course, China hasn't stopped at that, and
Sure.
now they want to work on these consensus. So it is a never-ending focus that we have to keep on Bhutan and our northern neighbors and all our territories, all the countries around
Sure.
us to build the strength.
Get it. I get that. General Yadav, one final question to you, sir. Do you believe that Doklam can still be a flashpoint between, a military flashpoint between India and China?
It cannot be ruled out. Looking at China and what is happening, if you look at in the eastern Ladakh, the way they had come, and now opposite with this Sela tunnel being open, if you look at the pattern of China, we built a road from Nubra Valley to DBO. Moment that happened, they felt threatened and they moved in 2020 in May. All right. Suddenly now, moment Sela, this tunnel has been inaugurated. Their global times, they're making noises all over the place, and their officials, they're also talking through their head onto that, trying to reassert that Arunachal Pradesh is South Tibet and it is our territory. So this kind of a game, and China cannot be relied at all. What they will do at what time is anybody's guess. Hence, we have to keep all our contingencies ready, and we have to be ready militarily, politically, economically to face this country.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you both very much for joining us. India and Bhutan fortunately have excellent diplomatic links, which is why there is a real possibility that the economic strength of India working together with Bhutan might actually be able to work to protect the interests of both nations vis-a-vis China. Thank you both very much indeed.